My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, or as it is in California, good morning. Gill, how are you?
John, I'm excellent. I'm excited to be on as always. That intro always gets me fired up. So when was Paolini? When was that filmed?
That was a good question. Gill, I like it. I like to be asked questions. April, Stuttgart this year. Paolini, of course, is someone that's going to feature in this show. Some may be surprised, some may not be. But certainly, if it had been a year ago and we did this show, Gill, and one of us had put Paolini in our top 10, people would have thought, that's a bit unusual, right?
No doubt about it. It would have been more
It'd
than
been a huge call, and that person could live off that for the rest of their tennis journalism career.
Exactly.
And that's what we're here to do, right? Today, we're going to try and be predictive, try and be experts. We'll probably, in a year from now, look back on this top 10 that we're about to portray and say, oh dear, I think I got that wrong. But that's what we're here for. We'll actually begin straight away, Gill, and we'll get straight into it. Well, first of all, I'm going to share this, which is the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation, which I've already described to you just before we began by saying this is possibly the worst PowerPoint presentation you have ever seen, and probably many of the others have ever seen. So first of all, obviously, I've just taken a much crystaller, I would suggest, picture of you from Twitter, and there's one from me which was taken a couple of years ago and slightly less clear. But that's the beginning of this presentation. But we're going to get straight into it, Gill, and begin with the aforementioned Jasmine Paolini, because she is your number 10. Let's begin with her, and let's talk about, obviously, the meteoric rise she had over the last 12 months, but then also why you have her slipping down from where she is right now at number 4.
I guess here's the best way that I can describe why I have her slipping down. A lot of her success last year, it felt like the best mental game you can possibly deliver on a tennis court. Like just the way she was competing point in, point out, with joy, with positivity, willing to put in a lot of hard work, focusing, being thoughtful about what she was doing on the court. Like everything was just at a 10 out of 10 mentally. And I think I tweeted during Wimbledon, if I want to show a young player like how to play a match, how to compete, Jasmine Paolini was basically that for 2024. I think that is difficult to maintain. And if she can do it, that'd be awesome. I think that's difficult to maintain once you start to have pressure, more expectation, more, media attention. So I even thought I saw it a little bit at the U.S. Open, and she did not play badly at the U.S. Open, but it did look like a slightly different Paolini emotionally, which is only natural. So I just think things will be tougher for her mentally, but I did want to keep her in my top 10, John, because look, she kept backing it up, and she has great speed. She's got a big forehand. She defends extremely well. So I still, there are things to like about her game.
I agree. I think in terms of where she was at mentally in 2024 in particular, could be crystallized into that semi-final against Vekic. She was just loving the occasion, Gill. She was, even though she was pretty much behind on the scoreboard throughout that match, down a break in the third, let's not forget that, and then catching up. I think she broke back and then down. Whatever seemed to happen in that particular match, she seemed to be very happy with. And, she seemed to manage that. And although she was constantly down on the scoreboard until the third set tiebreak, and even then that was very much nip and tuck until about, I think it was 7 all or 8 all in that tiebreak. She seemed to be thriving under that environment. And I actually don't have her. I'm going to mention it. I don't have her in the top 10. It was probably nip and tuck for her whether she would be where you've placed her, Gill. But I've gone for Anisimova. And I remember when I messaged you about a week ago saying, do you want to do this? And you said, I'd love to do it. And I threw out my top 10. And I remember your response was interesting, or words to that effect. And I'm wondering if you were responding to my Anisimova in the top 10 prediction. If that was that the player that came into your mind, or was there someone else?
No, and I gotta try to rack my memory.
Don't worry.
Exactly.
If you check your DMs, it'll be there. But I'll just give a little bit on my Anisimova choice.
Sure.
Obviously, her making the final in Canada. Obviously, the backstory there with obviously her having the time off away from the tennis tour. I think the potential is there. I also think when it comes to this, we could play it safe, if you like, Gill, and we could always just, tweak you could look at the top 10 right now and move each one around by a couple of places and move someone up from number 13 and go for it. But I think, you know what, this sort of 9, 10, I think there's like Paolini made it this year, albeit that she made it number 4 in the end. I think you've got to go a bit left field. And I just think that everything is there for her. And if she can, she's one of these hit and miss players, I know. But I also looked at age, and that was a huge factor with certain players in my top 10. I did sort of look at some of these players around 22, 23, 24 years old and think, who's the one who's going to make that step forward? I mean, probably last year was Qinwen Zheng in that age category. Obviously, Paolini being the standout one in terms of improvement. But I just thought I've believed in her game for 2 years, and I believe in it more as much now as ever before.
Yeah, I totally get it. The ball striking is, it's not just good enough to be top 10. It's as good as anybody's. Like sometimes she looks like it's Rybakina, with how well she hits the ball. But, I left her out because did
she come into your thinking, Gill? Was she on your radar?
It's especially because you put her in and showed me that. I did consider her. At the end of the day, it's just, does she withstand the rigors of the tour mentally and physically week in and week out? That's a challenge for her. And also it is a movement sport. So I think sometimes when she's going up against, like if you compare her to Sabalenka and Rybakina, I just think it's a little bit harder for her to move into the corners. But I also think there's probably room for her to grow physically, athletically, I should say. And that work is yet to be seen. So if Anisimova comes out January and it looks like she is fitter and quicker, all of a sudden, I think this is looking like a really likely pick.
Okay. I just want to say that we're going to be here for about half an hour with Gill because Gill is going to be commentating later on today, today where you are in LA, right, Gill? Because you're going to be on our screens. On which channel can we find you on, and what are you going to be commentating on?
So that's going to be on T2, which is available on so many different platforms, which is great. Doing Lulu Sun versus Rebecca Marino. It's obviously a big deal in New Zealand for Lulu to be playing. First time she was representing New Zealand at this tournament, because she was representing Switzerland when she played the ASB Classic last year. And of course, the Wimbledon quarterfinal has gone down since, and the run at the end of the year in Monterey as well. So that's big time. And then Naomi Osaka is also in action in Auckland, New Zealand. So the start of her 2025 campaign with Patrick Mouratoglou in the box. So looking forward to commentary today.
And if Gill, you think, is on the wane during the last half an hour of that commentary, you can blame Talking Tennis for taking up his time. But fingers crossed things work out. To our number 9, okay? I'm going to begin with Muchova. And I think when I saw your list and I saw mine, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but I saw in my first couple of spots, if you like, coming back from 10 upwards, I was like, oh, okay, I've gone for Muchova and Gill hasn't. I was kind of looking at your spots. In fact, I was doing the PowerPoint that we can see on our screens right now, and I was going, okay, so I've gone for Muchova and Gill hasn't, but we'll come to that in a minute or two, because we're going to see that actually maybe that isn't the case. Again, spoilers alert. But I've gone for Muchova, and I don't know, do I need to explain it? I think I can explain it in one expression: fitness or health. Because if she's healthy and she has 12 months on tour and she's so good across all 3 surfaces, just a normal year, she's easily in the top 10. The problem is, of course, the asterisk, I think, always with Muchova is her health, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. But it's just amazing because every time she comes back from these injuries, she she picks up and plays a top level. And you're worried every time that she's going to come back and not look the same. And then usually she comes back and she looks the same. So that part is really positive. I mean, especially it was a wrist injury that kept her out the first half of last year. So you're concerned about that, but looked like she was ripping the forehand, no problem. Had the run of the U.S. Open semifinal. So yeah, it's just about health with Karolina.
With your pick, Badosa, of course, she was on my radar. I was tempted. The reason probably I just veered away from her, and maybe again I shouldn't hone in on one match too much, but I just remember when probably in the best moment for her in recent memory, arguably was during the U.S. Open, and I don't know. I don't think I didn't enjoy watching the way she went out of the U.S. Open, and yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you can watch a match, Gil. I don't know if it's the same for you, and it can really leave an impression. And during that third set, I just felt that she wanted to be anywhere except on that tennis court that day in New York, and that sort of left a mark on me. And she was on my consideration for sure in this sort of 8, 9, 10 area because she's not far away right now, I think. But yeah, and that's the reason why I went away from her. Tell us why, though, you backed her to finish in the top 10 this year.
I feel like last summer she just unlocked a new sort of aggressive sort of she became offensive in a way that I don't think she had ever been. So it was to me like a Svitolina-esque renaissance this summer where she just got comfortable playing more attacking tennis for the first time ever. And obviously she is a great athlete and always sort of fares well when she's not injured in the more physical battles, and she's got great baseline consistency. Her serve is, it's above average. It's not something you're super fearful of, but I think it's above average. So I just see her as a very, very well-rounded player. And you definitely have the concern with health with Badosa as well, with the back injury that's pretty severe. And I don't know that she's going to have the longest of careers, but I feel like next year she might be able to find something and go on some big runs in some big tournaments.
Could be a now or never scenario. Maybe never's too strong a word to use, but it could be her moment to really go for it. Otherwise, things might slip away. I remember that back injury really flaring up in Rome in last year, and I remember seeing her keeling over, Gil, into one of those flower beds that we see during that European clay court season. And I just thought she was exhausted after a lengthy rally against Ostapenko she ended up losing to. And I thought nothing more of it. And then she basically barely played for the rest of the year because of the back injury you highlighted. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I sort of left her out. But listen, let's see how it pans out. Okay, let's move on. Number 8. Well, we've both gone for the same player for this one, Jessica Pegula. Probably doesn't leave too much to I guess the main question would be, why have we both placed her a little bit further down the rankings? Go for it, Gil.
Well, she's not old, but
No.
she's the oldest.
Yes.
So if there's one player whose age number you're looking at and you're thinking, all right, like what's the trajectory? Are we on the downswing? Are we on the upswing? Pegula might be that player, but I also think that, and sometimes I feel like we are guilty of this to a fault. We look at some young players with maybe more explosiveness. Maybe, there's more of an exciting kind of fresh vibe around them. We imagine best case scenario for 2025, and we have them leapfrogging a player like Pegula, where it doesn't always work out that way, right? I think Holger Rune last year on the ATP side is a great example.
Yep.
The trajectory was, okay, Holger finishes top 5 next year. And it's like, well, there are maybe some more reliable, perhaps lower ceiling players, but just players who have more things figured out who end up doing better. And I feel like Pegula has been that player. She continues to kind of make improvements in terms of beefing up her serve this year. I always like sort of how she competes mentally. There's a ton to like, but I guess it's just a matter of feeling like there are some more exciting options and looking at a 30-year-old and thinking, okay, like it's been a grind the last few years, and physically things might start to go down.
The age thing, especially when we compare it to the ATP tour, is really interesting because, you know, the ages we're looking at on the WTA, as you said, she's the oldest person, I think, in both our top tens. And is she 30 or coming up to 30 this year, Gill? In that ball. Yeah, right. And so we're all looking at these players and we're going, okay, I think, you know, Qinwen Zheng is coming through and one or two others as well. And maybe, you know, Jessica Pegula is going to slip down a couple of places, which is basically what we've done. And then we compare it to the ATP side where we're looking at, you know, I know that Djokovic right now is not in the top three, but we're going into probably every slam, certainly the first slam of the year, and he's one of the 3 or 4 contenders that are for. And we've got this huge gap between him. Anyone else is kind of, you know, anywhere in terms of the ages. And yet the WTA looks at the top end of the tour, looks pretty set for quite a few years, if you like. Obviously, the ATP has gone through, and yet we've jumped from people in their late 30s to people very much in their early 20s, whereas we're looking at Pegula, whereas, you know, when we were looking at Rafa and Novak and Roger at 30 years old, well, we didn't know it then exactly, but they still had another 10 years of being at the top end of the sport. But yeah, and so I'm similar to you. I will add this, that I don't think I'm necessarily saying that Pegula is, despite the fact she broke that quarterfinal threshold last year, I still think that she's playing, you know, top 5 tennis. I just think with her that might not be enough right now. It's kind of echoing what you're saying, but that might not be enough for her to stay in the top 4 or 5. And she may make a few quarterfinals this year, but do I see her winning a Grand Slam in 2025? Honestly, no. But I think with her, she's almost the safest choice amongst the top 10. It would be crazy if you didn't have her in the top 10, but it might also be a little bit, oh, you've got her in the top 3, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting player to figure out. I think what I wrote in my notes, and it's kind of what you're saying, we don't have her getting worse. We have other players getting better. And that's kind of why she's dropped down here. But I also sometimes feel bad. I don't want to underestimate Pegula because she does have this understated style that can go underappreciated. And it's wrong because fans watch and they don't understand how hard she's hitting the ball because she's not grunting and it looks very smooth and easy. But everything's deep. She's so balanced. The depth is incredible on every shot. The returns come back into play. Like, she is such a great fundamental tennis player. I compare it a lot to like Novak Djokovic without the sort of tier 1 movement, like without that crazy athleticism. But as a ball striker and the way she kind of goes about her tennis, I think it's really Djokovic-like. We've seen sort of Novak's game sometimes be underappreciated by almost the more casual eye.
Fair. Let's get to our number 7. It's also the same. Maybe of the 10, maybe this is the one that sort of, when I was doing this amazing PowerPoint presentation earlier, I was like, oh, we've both got Navarro at 7. That was kind of the one that stood out for me most. I think it's one of 3 in our top 10 that we have exactly the same place. I could be wrong. We're going to soon find out. But yeah, why have we both said that Navarro is going to maybe just go up a couple? I think she's number 9, if I'm right, in the world rankings right now, 9 or 10. So we've both got her just, again, I think age was a factor here that I think she's going to get a little bit better.
Yeah, but also trajectory, right? So it's like one thing, Coco Gauff is 20 years old. But we saw like when she was 18 to 19, you didn't always see like Coco's trajectory wasn't linear and like upward constantly. Otherwise, she'd be number 1 in the world and she'd have usurped Iga and Aryna at this point, right? But I just think the last couple of years with Navarro, who's 23, it just feels like her improvement has been hypercharged last 2 years. It just keeps getting better and better. So we're on that train right now. But I think in terms of the tennis itself, defensively, I think she's as good as anybody. Like the pace absorption, best in the world, in my opinion. I don't think there's anybody tougher to rush than Emma Navarro, and her movement is up there. So it's actually Coco-like in the sense where she's just super hard to hit through, and her age plus her technique, it gives me a lot of reasons to feel like the weapons are going to build. Right now, it's just weapon building, serve forehand, weapon building, because the rest is all there.
Yeah, I pretty much echo those sentiments as well, and that's why I have her at number 7. Let's move on to number 6 on our rankings and an aforementioned player, but I will get your thoughts on her in a second. Mirra Andreeva, by the way, again, trajectory is a key word. And I think, she had that Madrid, breakout moment. I think it was beating Leylah, I think, in the first round there, Leylah Fernandez, last year. She's a little inconsistent, but that's completely normal at her age. And again, she's got all the weapons is the wrong word. All the characteristics, I think, is the word I should use in tennis terms, to be an amazing, great player. I think we saw flashes of it in Australia last year as well. And I just see that continuing. I see a little bit of a few bumps, but I do see her, cracking the top 10. And if she's in the top 10, I think number 6 is a reasonable spot for her. You don't have her in your top 10, Gill. Was she on your radar?
She was on my radar for sure. I think her, and I think we should make sure to mention her at some point on this podcast. Diana Schneider. I think Andreeva and Schneider, if you look at young players knocking on the door, I think those are the two. And I sort of had them both getting boxed out. I think odds are one of them develops in a way that sees them break into the top 10 next year. For Andreeva, my concern is just that maybe she's not yet physically strong enough. So she's still just not hitting the ball big enough to take enough time away from her opponents. And as well as she moves, as consistent as she is, as balanced as she is off of both wings, she times the ball beautifully. I think she's going to be a great, great player. I just don't know if she's a top 10 WTA player physically yet.
Okay. Why have you got Muchova 3 spots higher than, I think I had her at 9 than I have things? When I saw I had Muchova, as I said to you just before, I thought, I've got Muchova. He hasn't, because I'd seen your first sort of 10, 9, 8, 7s. And yet here she appears at number 6.
Yeah, maybe it's a fantasy world, but it's just, I'm not going to say I don't have an injury factored in here, but I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt of staying healthy for the sake of this exercise. Now, the crazy thing about Muchova right now, she's got 1 title still in her career. But the slams, she shows up for the slams. I think 4 semifinals or better. Obviously, the Roland Garros run to the championship match gave Iga a run for her money. Incredibly impressive. And it's just me hoping that we're going to get a healthy year from Muchova, and that's why I have her at 6.
Fair enough. Number 5, albeit her name is absent from my amazing PowerPoint there, is probably, and this may have been the one that sparked your interesting, I think, response to what I said, was probably my most controversial pick. And not because of her absence. She's in the top 10, but it's Iga Swiatek I have at number 5. I'll just lay it out. I wonder if the Wim Fissette thing could go one of 2 ways, and you can clearly see the way I have it going. The keenness and the desperation, if you like, to add some facets to her game may also go the other way, particularly when it comes to clay. I'm not suggesting she's going to have a bad clay court season, but who knows? This might be one of those. This could be her 2009 for Rafa, if you like. This and this could be as well. There is one other factor which did influence my short-term thinking with as well, is the fact that the Wim Fissette thing, could take a while. That he's going to introduce things, and there might be some short-term pains for some long-term gain. And there is another thing is, I know we've seen how Jannik has reacted to this doping cloud. I don't know if that might make her go into a shell even more. And listen, it's all speculation, and I've decided to go with her. For me, it's a stone drop for her from being number 1 for pretty much the best part of 2 years to now being number 5. She's got a lot of points to defend on the clay, of course, and that's it. That's my thoughts. Any reactions to that, Gill?
I get it. I mean, look, mentally at times it seemed like things are combustible. And I don't use that word as to say she has blow-ups, because she certainly doesn't have blow-ups, but her confidence, I would say, and her peace with herself and her game can sometimes go away. So I think we have seen that sort of vulnerability there. I get it with the doping cloud. I mean, I think that's a concern with Wim. Look, on one hand, Iga is a perfectionist. She, you can sometimes mess yourself up when you're trying to introduce new things or struggle with it. And it's a new relationship and there's risk there. At the same time, I think there is some opportunity to sort of tighten some things up and add some new dimensions to her game, which haven't previously existed. And I'm really excited to see her try to do that, because I thought that, at times she wasn't necessarily utilizing all of her abilities to the max. For example, court position wise, I don't know why she's always glued on top of the baseline. Like, to me, she's got incredible speed. She's got a ton of weight of shot from the back, especially with her forehand, but she's a little bit rushable. So that's like all of the ingredients there. Move back, give yourself the extra second, use your high heavy ball and kind of work inside the court, up the consistency levels, which when she struggles, the forehand can just be a spray fest. That's what it was against Pegula at the US Open, for example. So stuff like that, right? Let's be dynamic with the court position. Let's know when to go backwards. Let's know when to go forwards. Let's mix it up based on the situation. We can go on and on, but that's just one example of something that it hasn't been a part of her game. I haven't understood why. I would hope that Wim Fizette would come in and we'd start to see some stuff like that.
Okay, let's move to your number 5 pick, which is Qinwen Zheng. Yeah, I'd say it's not exactly a super controversial one. We see her pretty much staying at the upper echelons of the game, but maybe I'm guessing by the way you probably don't have her in your mind as someone who's going to win a Grand Slam next year. Is that fair? If you've got her at 5, or she's making a Grand Slam final, she's going to have a similar year to this year, to 2024, right?
I would say, how about this? If Iga finishes year-end 5, I think Zheng Qinwen won Roland Garros.
She could be the next. Listen, if you don't mind, let's go to my number 4, and it'll entwine itself, if you like, with what we're saying. So I've got her at 4, and maybe that is the difference between her being 4 and 5 in the world. Maybe I've got her somewhere in a parallel or in some universe out there, beating Iga en route to the title. And don't forget, of course, Iga was within a point of not making it this year with that epic match she had against Naomi Osaka. I see. Maybe that's part of my reasoning for having her at 4. She's the biggest threat to Iga at Roland Garros, right?
Yeah, because she's so deadly with time. The forehand really struggles when it's rushed, and I think against Sabalenka at times she's looked completely confounded. Because she just doesn't feel like she has enough time on the other end to produce her strokes. But when she has time and she has the higher bounce, she's got an absolutely nasty forehand. And the athleticism, right? The court coverage on the clay is also imposing. So if you just look at raw power to movement ratio, I don't know if anyone is pushing that envelope on both ends more than Zheng Qinwen.
Number 4. You have Coco Gauff. Again, I don't think this is a particularly controversial choice on your side, at least, anyway. Yeah, you see her again having a. Well, I'm going to come to Coco in a minute because she's obviously a little bit higher up in my rankings. Tell us why you have her at 4.
Yeah, it's so interesting. She's right, because she made a comment recently that was, I think it was in Saudi Arabia at the year-end championships, where she's like, when I do something, it's bad. Other women do it and it's great. And it's the same result. And she's totally right. And this would be an example of that, where number 4, it almost feels underwhelming because, well, she's been there, she's done that, and she's young, and you want her to take the next step. And I would say, like, at some point, yeah, she does need to take the next step, but also 4 is a great year. So I think she said it well, that the standards are different. I guess
4 could still be a Grand Slam winning year.
It could. Here's why I don't have her higher. I believe in the second serve and the forehand getting better. I do. But I think it's also fair to say we've been talking about this for 3-4 years now. And sometimes players just have weaknesses. So I think the path to her finishing number one, making that leap, rising to that next level would be, okay, we love her forehand. She's actually really confident and really solid off of that. Or we love her second serve. That's how and like Sabalenka patched some of those things up and sort of made that leap. That's what Coco needs to do. I'm just not fully confident that it's going to happen here.
Fair enough. I'm going to address Coco in a second because she's higher up in my rankings, albeit she's not at number 3. And here is our penultimate. No, listen, Rybakina, number 3. We both have her having a good year, probably even better than she had, obviously, in 2024, albeit that she spent large parts of this year off the tour. I just see she is number 1 in the world material. That doesn't mean it's going to happen at some point in 2025, but it's there. She's got everything. She's got everything to win 3 of the 4 majors on the tour. You could even say that she's not far off. She's won Rome in the past. She's decent on the clay. I think her movement could be a little better on that surface, but in the right conditions, she can beat Iga on that surface. She did so in Stuttgart, albeit obviously Stuttgart is indoor clay. I mean, she has everything. The only thing is that little bit of consistency, just a small amount of consistency in terms of we know the issues she had in 2024. We don't need to elaborate on those. She's had a coaching change recently with Goran entering. I like some of the things that Goran even said a couple of days ago when he was interviewed in one of those sort of whispery conversations that they get at the United Cup on the sidelines there. You could talk about Goran and Wim coming in with Iga, and you don't know which direction that's going to go in. But for some reason, I have an optimistic thing. And, everything is there. She should have probably won Wimbledon. It was there for her this year. She was up a set, I think, on Barbora Krejcikova. And for some reason, that didn't quite work out. But, yeah, she just has everything. I don't know what else I can add. And if she just plays 3 or 4 more tournaments, she's probably in the top 4 this year, top 3 this year as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, if you look at her track record when she was active, this in 2024, it was actually really, really good. I'm really excited for the vibe change here in the coaching box. Like, forget all the technical stuff. Stefano Vukov, if you're being generous, he was a tough love guy. And I think it was hard for Rybakina. We assume it was, even if, to her credit, she never really went public with any stuff like that. Goran is just a very, very different character. He's going to make things fun. He's going to add some levity to the experience of playing on tour. And I just hope that unlocks Rybakina mentally and frees her up in a way that she hasn't been able to previously achieve.
Do check out an episode. I remember Gill addressing this very, very sensitive nature just after, I think, probably the Australian Open final of last year. So do check out Gill's thoughts on some of the things that Pam Shriver addressed. And I really like the way you approach that topic. So do check out that episode from just over a year ago, where I think Gill gave some really good thoughts. But listen, let's move on to our number 2. And this is where you go for Swiatek, and I've gone a little bit ambitious, let's say, maybe for Coco. And this is where Coco is probably winning. I guess if she's going to finish number 2, she probably has to win at least 1 slam this year. And perhaps winning a couple of 1000s en route. And yes, tell you what I'm just going to do is just say, I think, and this is probably where this is my statement, I think the tennis that she played in October, November of this year, I keep thinking it's last year. It's not quite yet, but it is in the tennis world.
I think it's last year in tennis.
Yes, indeed. October, November was the best tennis of Coco Gauff's career. And I know why everyone's going, what is this guy? Did he not watch any tennis in September or August of last year when she has that amazing run in North America? I know she had that great run that obviously culminated in winning the US Open. I think during that run, though, there was some remarkable moments, but they were remarkable because she was winning from unbelievable positions where she was snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. And I think she deserves all the praise in the world for that. In October and in November, I saw her going toe to toe with some of these players, such as Iga, such as Aryna Sabalenka, and she was beating them on her terms. It felt like that they were more, without sounding disrespectful to those wins that she had in August and September of last year, they felt like, I'm the best player on the court here and I'm beating you in my way, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you mean. I guess for me, it would be just somewhat of a bias that I have against, and a bias by design against October and November tennis.
Fair.
And, it's just, I generally try not to change my opinions too much about players
Felix,
that time of
I'm
year.
thinking of Felix now in October, especially in that Basel, he just suddenly turns up and then anyway.
Right. No, I mean, there are a lot of examples. I try not to change my opinions on players that time of year, but you might be right. And because, it did look like there was more conviction in a lot of her aggressive tennis. Iga at number 2, like I feel like that's been her floor, obviously the last few years. And I'm optimistic about Vim. I'm just excited for her to try some new stuff, because I also think that personality wise, she can benefit from that. And this is true for most great players. I think she enjoys the process of trying to add new stuff and to have something to focus on the practice court. And maybe it felt like things were kind of just, there was too much going through the motions. But also at the end of the day, you know what? Like, for all we talk about with technical improvements, she just needs mentally to get into a better place during the slams, because the main thing that's held Iga back, particularly on hard court, has been the pressure getting the best of her at the biggest events of the year outside of Roland Garros. Because look how she's performed at the Masters 1000 on hard courts. Great. Just hasn't happened in Melbourne and New York. So Wim has a lot of experience with top players in big matches, and hopefully that can also help Iga with her mental approach.
We both have the same number 1. I don't think it was probably of the 10. I even joked with you, because I think, Gill, you sent in the message, you wrote 1 Sabalenka, and then you wrote in the next message 2 to 10. It just felt like it was the easiest of the 10 to pick. Is that, or were you okay? Because it leads on from what you just said. Were you humming and hawing over Iga or Aryna, or was it just, I'm putting Aryna and then?
Yes and no. I don't think it was that hard for me. I was pretty confident in my selection. Did I think, okay, there's more untapped potential for Swiatek compared to Sabalenka? Yes, I do believe that. I think there's more room to grow, whereas Sabalenka, close to a finished product at this point, to her credit, because there was a lot of polishing over the last couple of years that she required. But I think her targets are much better. There's a certainty and a clear-headedness in what she's trying to do, which has made her very upset-proof.
At the slams, definitely.
At slams. She feels her court position now quite well. She's using the touch sometimes. There were big moments last year where you could look at a big point and there was a drop shot or there was a volley for Sabalenka. So I think, she deserves a lot of credit for that. And I'd also point to the second serve. Saying she stopped double faulting totally undersells her. It undersells her. She's got one of the best second serves in the world. She was 3rd best on tour, winning second serve points. It's one of the hardest second serves to attack. Then the last thing I'll say is, like, you look at how she constructed how last year went. It's a lot of hardship. The tragedy with her ex-boyfriend dying in Miami, didn't take any time off, struggling mentally from there, shoulder injury, missed Wimbledon. This was an example of someone finishing number 1 who could have been way better.
Definitely. I actually had that in my thinking as well. There is one other thing I would add to the Sabalenka sort of stories. I remember I was at that match in 2022 when she lost in the semis to Iga Swiatek, and there was a narrative building, in fact, more than building, it was exploding regarding Aryna Sabalenka, most talented player on tour, not to make a major final. And I think that was a fairly strong case. I know Maria Sakkari was in a similar sort of bubble, but for me, Aryna's potential and ceiling was always going to be much higher. And we went into the Australian Open of 2023, and I did back her to win that title in 2023. I predicted her to win Australia. However, let me tell you this, on the day of the final against Rybakina in 2023, I was just thinking, John, if you'd have asked me then to, put my money where my mouth was, I probably would have switched horse just in that last moment to Rybakina in terms of comfort of where she would be in that environment of a Grand Slam final. having done it in 2022 in Wimbledon. But once she won that slam final, I saw something, and I made this sort of comment just afterwards saying, I see Aryna as not going down a sort of Dominic team. I finally achieved my lifetime goal, and it might be difficult to keep at that level. I know Dominic has other issues as well with the wrist in particular, but we've seen so many people that finally achieve it, and then they're like fine with that. I saw more of and I used a Formula One example of Michael Schumacher in that he was desperately trying to win that Formula One title for Ferrari, and he finally got it. But I thought to myself, when he did that, that's not the end of it. He wants a domination. He wants a Schumacher era, and he definitely did that. And I see Sabalenka, and I hear it from members of her team, some of which I've interviewed on this channel. I think she's that for her. Some people with pressure, they want that, and they're so desperate for it, and they finally achieve it, and that's the end of their journey. For her, it's like the shackles are off. That's the expression I wanted to use for her in 2023. And the shackles are off for her. And now she can go in there and play her best tennis. And I think she has done at the slams for the last year and a half. And then there's the Wimbledon goal. And I think there's a Wimbledon title in her, maybe more than one. And I think 2025 might well be that year.
Yeah, Wimbledon's going to be huge. It was strange for her how things played out for the rest of 2023, where there were some really bad moments at the end of majors in final weekends, which I didn't expect, because I agreed with you. Like I thought, hey, you have a player who doesn't need to kind of has that weight off of her shoulders, and the moments aren't going to overcome her like they used to. It still did a couple of times, which was weird, but now she's getting to the point, and we would say this about the big four and Serena, especially big three and Serena. When you're in three major finals a year, and now you're going on your sixth and your seventh and your eighth, it still feels like a big deal. Don't get me wrong. And obviously I've never been in this position, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it feels like, but it starts to become more normal. And you have your routines, you know what's worked, you know what didn't work, you know exactly kind of what frame of mind you need to be in. And like half the time, especially like you'd see Djokovic, he plays an Australian Open final. It's kind of just another Sunday. He's playing against Stefanos Tsitsipas. It's the biggest day of your life. So you're going to start to have that dynamic with Aryna at the end of slams, not necessarily in finals, but she's been going deep now in basically every single one for 2 years.
I spoke to a member of her team earlier this year, and I think even the French Open was a disappointment for them in terms of the fact, obviously, I think the semi-final this year, quarterfinal last year, and that's not even. I know you're probably thinking of some of those matches like against Ons at Wimbledon, and also the Coco Gauff US Open semi-final, and that semi-final against Muchova in particular. I think she was a breakup in the third, and still think, but I think the goals are still very, very big for that team. And I feel that in her, that this is just the beginning almost. I mean, I think she's won 3 Grand Slams now, 2 Aussies and 1 US. And I still think that they're thinking big. They're not saying it too loudly, and even then I'm having to read between the lines. They're thinking double digits is possible in this career that we have unfolding right in front of our eyes. I know that her age is in that sort of, now she's in her mid to late 20s, so it's there, but they look at this 5 years of regular Grand Slam winning stuff unfolding in front of their eyes, and that's why I have her at number 1 as well.
For sure.
Gill, I know you've got to get going. I'm just going to share your YouTube page. Do check out Gill Gross, and you'll see him in many different facets, including, I'm going to remind those that are tuning in now rather than the beginning of the show, we're going to be seeing you on our tennis channel screens in a few hours, right? Just go through that one more time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be on T2, YouTube TV, Fubo TV, Samsung TV Plus, Hulu Live TV. Plethora of platforms you can get T2 on, and we're going to be doing some Auckland matches of the Lulu Sun Homecoming and the Naomi Osaka start of the 2025 campaign. So very exciting stuff coming up there. And John, always fun to come on with you. And good to get my WTA top 10 out there. Now I'm on the hook for my WTA top 10.
You are.
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed, it might even just get a reappearance at some point during 2025 where you go, you know what? I did predict that Sabalenka was going to be the year-end #1, and at some point during your commentary, you can squeeze in a little brag there if you like, Gill, and you shared it on Talking Tennis. Big thanks for joining us today. Do check out Gill on all the socials, as well as his money match analysis and many other things. 3 is continuing. Is that right, Gill?
Yeah, there's going to be some changes, obviously, but
Okay.
but three is not going away. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Do check us out again as well. Do check us out, subscribe, like, and all that other jazz. And we'll be touching base with all of you very, very soon. Thanks, Gill. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.